In the year 2245, Earth's richest lived far above the clouds, in cities that touched the sky. From up there, you could see the curve of the planet and the silver lines of starships leaving for distant colonies. It was a world where money was power, and power decided everything. Orion Vale was one of those people who had both. He was a self-made millionaire, a skilled diplomat who represented Earth at the Galactic Council, and a man whose face appeared on news screens across the solar system. People admired him, feared him, and envied him, but no one really knew the quiet ache he carried every day, the loss of his wife, Alara, who had died 5 years ago. Only one person understood that pain, his young daughter, Lyra. She had her mother's gentle eyes and her father's stubborn will. She was just 12. But she already carried herself like someone who had learned that love could be fragile. For years, Orion had focused on raising her alone, but now, the council was pushing him to remarry. They said it was for the good of Earth's alliances. A new marriage could strengthen ties with powerful families, and even secure trade deals with alien civilizations. The decision wasn't just personal, it was political. One cool evening, in the grand dining hall of his cloud-top mansion, Orion made the announcement. The hall was quiet, except for the soft hum of the anti-gravity chandeliers. Lyra sat across from him, holding her cup of synth tea with both hands, her legs swinging gently under the table. "Lyra," he began, his voice deep but careful, "I've decided it's time for me to remarry." Her eyes widened. She didn't speak at first. The word remarry felt heavy. It felt like it would change everything. But Orion continued, leaning forward, "I'm not going to choose my new wife. You are." Lyra almost dropped her cup. "Me," she whispered. "Yes," he said firmly. "You're the one who will live with her. You're the one whose heart matters most in this choice. There will be 5 candidates. All of them are women of influence, wealthy, powerful, and capable. You'll meet them, spend time with them, and at the end, you'll tell me which one should become your new mother." Her thoughts spun. She imagined strangers smiling at her, pretending to care, trying to win her approval. She didn't like the idea, but she also knew her father rarely made decisions without a reason. In the corner of the room, unnoticed by most, stood Maritha, black housekeeper, who had been part of their home since Lyra was a baby. Mara's uniform was simple, her hair neatly tied back. She had no jewels, no high titles, and no power in the political sense. But she had always been there, wiping Lyra's tears, teaching her old Earth songs, and listening when the nights felt too long. Mara's eyes met Lyra's. For just a moment, she gave the girl a small, reassuring smile. It was the kind of smile that said, "I'm here, no matter what happens." Orion didn't notice. He was already outlining the plan how the 5 candidates would arrive over the next week, each staying in the mansion for a day to get to know Lyra. "I want you to be honest," he told her. "This isn't just about alliances. It's about finding someone who can be a true mother to you." Lyra nodded slowly, but her heart was unsettled. She didn't know if she could find a true mother among strangers, dressed in gold and diamonds. She already had someone who felt like a mother, someone who didn't need to impress anyone. But she couldn't say that aloud. Not yet. That night, as she lay in bed, the city lights shimmered beyond her window, like falling stars. She thought about the days ahead, the faces she would see, the voices she would hear, and she wondered if her father really understood what made a family. Far below the bright towers, the winds of the old Earth seas still whispered through the clouds. Somewhere deep in her heart, Lyra hoped those whispers might guide her choice, no matter how unexpected it might be. The first morning of the selection week arrived, with the sky painted in soft gold. From Lyra's balcony, the city floated like a dream, bridges of glass connecting towers, and airships gliding between them like silver birds. It should have been a beautiful, exciting day. Instead, Lyra felt a knot in her stomach. Today, the first of the 5 candidates would arrive. And so with the cameras, Orion had invited the media to follow the process, turning it into a grand event for the galaxy to see. To him, it was a way to show transparency and to send a message to powerful families that Earth's alliances were worth investing in. To Lyra, it felt like a stage play where she had been cast without agreeing to the role. The front courtyard of the mansion became a runway. Reporters floated in hoverpods, their drones buzzing like curious insects. Guards in silver armor lined the gates. Mara moved quietly through the preparations, arranging refreshments, checking the dining table, and making sure Lyra's dress was perfect. "You look like your mother when she was your age," Mara said softly as she adjusted Lyra's hair. Lyra's throat tightened. "Do you think I can do this?" Mara's warm smile was the same as always. "You can. Just remember, don't let the sparkle blind you. Look for the heart." The gates opened. The first candidate stepped out of a sleek crimson space carrier. Tall, graceful woman named Lady Solara of Mars. She was a mining magnate whose family controlled most of the red planet's resources. Her gown shimmered like liquid metal, and her voice was smooth as polished stone. "Lyra, darling," Solara said, bending slightly to kiss the air near Lyra's cheek. "I've brought you a small gift." She presented a delicate sphere that lit up with a glowing 3D model of Mars' famous crystal caves. It was beautiful, but cold, just like the woman's perfect smile. The next day brought the second candidate, Asha Vena Venus, a biotech mogul known for creating medicines that extended human life by decades. Her dress flowed like golden mist, and she spoke of luxury, travel, and the wonders she could offer. One by one, they came. The third candidate was a lunar colony heiress, poised and polite, but more interested in showing off her jeweled rings than asking about Lyra's life. The fourth was a Jovian diplomat who carried herself like a queen but rarely looked directly at Lyra when speaking. The fifth was a Terran media star whose fame shone brighter than her sincerity. Each woman brought lavish gifts, boards, rare art, custom-built AI companions, but Lyra noticed something. Not one of them asked her about her favorite story, her dreams, or even her memories of her mother. They spoke of what they could give her, but not of who she was. In the quiet moments between introductions, Lyra would retreat to her room. Mara would come by with tea and a plate of sweet biscuits, listening as Lyra shared her thoughts. Mara never criticized the candidates, but she didn't need to. Her silence said enough. The media, however, was full of excitement. News screens lit up across the arcology with headlines like, "Earth's heiress meets Mars' jewel. Which alliance will Orion Vale choose?" In the eyes of the galaxy, this was a dazzling political dance. But for Lyra, it felt like being caught in a storm of smiles that didn't reach the eyes. On the last evening of the parade, Lyra sat on the balcony with Mara. The sky beyond the towers was streaked with violet and silver from the setting suns. "They're all so grand," Lyra said, her voice small. "But when I'm with them, I feel like a guest. When I'm with you, I feel like home." Mara looked at her for a long moment, her eyes soft. "Home isn't about walls, Lyra. It's about the people inside them." And though Lyra didn't say it out loud, she knew something deep in her heart. Her choice might not be what the galaxy expected. After the 5 women had made their grand entrances, Orion announced the next stage. Lyra would spend one full day with each candidate, away from the flashing cameras, so she could truly know their hearts. The media loved it. Headlines screamed about Earth's young heiress on the path to choosing her mother. But Lyra felt uneasy. She wasn't looking for jewels or power, she was looking for something warmer, something real. The first day was with Lady Solara of Mars. They visited the mansion's private observatory, where Solara spoke endlessly about the mining industry on Mars and the vast wealth her family controlled. She gave Lyra a diamond-studded bracelet and explained its value down to the last credit. But when Lyra asked about her own childhood, Solara brushed the question aside with a polite smile and returned to talking about her business. By the end of the day, Lyra's wrist glittered, but her heart felt empty. The second day was with Asha Vena Venus. Asha took Lyra to her private greenhouse, filled with rare glowing plants, engineered to survive on any world. She spoke with pride about her biotech inventions and the many planets she had visited. She gifted Lyra a perfume made from flowers that no longer grew naturally on Earth. It smelled beautiful, but when Lyra tried to talk about her mother, Asha simply said, "The past is the past, dear. Focus on the future." The third day was with the lunar heiress. They toured an art gallery, where the woman pointed out which paintings she owned and how much they cost. Lyra admired the art, but she couldn't shake the feeling that every sentence was a display of wealth, rather than a window into who the woman really was. The fourth day was with the Jovian diplomat. Tall, elegant, and confident, she invited Lyra to a formal tea ceremony. The setting was beautiful, but the conversation was stiff. Every answer felt rehearsed, every smile calculated. Lyra began to wonder if the woman saw her as a child or just as a key to Orion Vale's influence. The fifth day was with the Terran media star. They spent the afternoon in the mansion's virtual reality suite, exploring simulated beaches and alien landscapes. The woman laughed a lot and took countless pictures of them together. But when Lyra asked her what home meant to her, the media star only said, "Home is wherever the cameras are." That night, after the last visit, Lyra sat in her room, staring at the glittering gifts piled on her desk. They were all beautiful, but none of them made her feel loved. A soft knock came at the door. It was Mara, carrying a tray with a simple cup of cocoa and a slice of warm bread. "You've had a busy week," Mara said, placing the tray down. Lyra nodded. "They're all nice, but I don't feel like they see me. They just see the daughter of Orion Vale." Mara sat on the edge of the bed. "That's because people often look with their eyes, Lyra. The trick is to find someone who looks with their heart." Lyra stared at her for a long moment. Mara didn't have diamond bracelets or rare perfumes to give, but she had cocoa on, cold nights, stories when the world felt heavy, and a steady hand when Lyra's heart ached. In that moment, Lyra realized something. She already knew what it felt like to be loved without conditions. The problem was no one else seemed to notice. As Mara stood to leave, Lyra whispered, "What if the person I want isn't one of the 5? Mara paused, then smiled gently. "Then you'll have to be brave enough to say so." The mansion felt different after the week of visits. The halls were quieter, but not peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Lyra could feel the weight of eyes on her eyes. She couldn't even see. The media feeds were relentless. Every channel replayed moments from her meetings with the candidates. Commentators debated who she should choose. Some praised the Martian lady's elegance, others the Venusian's wealth, others the Jovian diplomat's political power. The lunar heiress and the Terran media star each had their own group of loud supporters. But no one talked about what Lyra felt. No one even asked. At breakfast, Orion sat across from her, a stack of reports beside his plate. His sharp, tired eyes scanned the data before speaking. "Lyra," he said, "the council is watching this closely. Choosing the right woman could open doors for Earth. We could gain trade routes, defense agreements, and influence in sectors we've struggled with for years." Lyra's spoon paused mid-air. "And if I don't choose one of them?" Orion frowned slightly. "That's not an option we should consider. This is about securing the future, not just for us, but for humanity." His voice wasn't angry, but it carried the firmness of a man used to winning negotiations. Lyra didn't argue, but inside, a quiet rebellion stirred. Later that day, one of Orion's advisors found her in the garden, a tall man in a silver coat. He spoke in the smooth tone of someone who always thought they knew best. "Miss Vale," he said, "you must understand every choice sends a message. If you pick the Martian lady, you secure Earth's mining needs for decades. If you pick the Venusian mogul, Earth's medical technology will leap forward. Each option benefits millions. Lyra listened, but the words felt heavy, like chains. What if I choose someone because I love them, not because of what they can give? She asked quietly. The advisor smiled faintly, almost pityingly. Love is a fine thing, but in matters like this, it is secondary. That night, the mansion hosted a private dinner for the candidates. Lyra was expected to sit at the long table, smiling for the cameras while the women made polite conversation. But the laughter felt hollow, the compliments too perfect. She felt like a guest at her own life. Halfway through the meal, she caught Mara's eyes from across the room. Mara was serving quietly, moving between the guests with her usual grace. Her presence was like a calm island in a stormy sea. When the speeches began, Lyra slipped away, escaping to the balcony. The city below glittered under the night sky. She gripped the railing and closed her eyes, wishing she could disappear into the lights. Footsteps approached. It was Mara, holding a folded blanket. "It's chilly out here," she said, draping it over Lyra's shoulders. "Everyone keeps telling me what's best for Earth," Lyra murmured, "but no one asks what's best for me." Mara didn't answer right away. She simply stood beside her, looking at the stars. "Sometimes," she said at last, "the right choice is the one that lets you sleep peacefully at night, even if it's not the choice everyone else wants." Lyra turned her head toward her. Mara wasn't trying to convince her of anything. She was simply there, steady, warm, unshakable. And in that moment, Lyra felt something no grand speech had given her: clarity. She didn't know how she would say it yet. She didn't know how her father would react. But she knew the truth. And the truth had nothing to do with diamonds, titles, or alliances. It began with a deep, distant rumble that shook the glass walls of the mansion. The clear night sky turned an angry shade of violet, split by jagged flashes of white. This wasn't an ordinary storm, it was an atmospheric surge, a rare but dangerous event in the cloud-top cities. When one hit, the air currents became violent, power grids flickered, and all flying transport was grounded. Inside the mansion, lights blinked once, twice, then everything went dark. The anti-gravity chandeliers faded, the quiet hum of the air filtration stopped, and for a moment, the only sound was the distant roar of the storm. The wealthy guests gasped in annoyance. "This is unacceptable," Lady Solara muttered, fanning herself as if the darkness offended her personally. The Venusian mogul pulled out her jeweled comm device, but the network was down. The lunar heiress demanded backup generators, and the Terran media star complained about missing her live broadcast. Lyra stood in the middle of the dining hall, feeling the tension grow. But before she could speak, Mara appeared from the shadows, holding a small case. With calm hands, Mara opened it to reveal a row of old-fashioned wax candles. She lit the first one with a simple matcha, rare thing in a world of digital everything. One by one, the flames came to life, warm and steady against the storm's angry glow outside. The guests fell silent, their protests dimming as Mara moved from table to table, placing candles in silver holders. The flickering light softened the room, casting gentle shadows on the walls. It wasn't luxury, but it was comfort, something most of the guests had forgotten how to feel. "Come with me," Mara whispered to Lyra. They went to the library, a quiet corner of the mansion filled with real books and other rarity. Mara set a candle on the table and pulled out a chair. "When I was your age," she began, "we didn't have power all the time. On nights like this, we told stories too. Keep the dark away." She started speaking in her steady, warm voice, telling a tale of old Earth explorers who sailed dangerous seas before humans ever touched the stars. It was a story of courage and unity, of people helping each other not for gain, but because it was right. Lyra listened, her mind painting the scenes in glowing detail. She forgot about the storm, the candidates, and the cameras. She only heard Mara's voice, calm and full of quiet strength. Unbeknownst to them, Orion had stepped into the doorway. He had been searching for Lyra, but stopped when he saw the scene. Daughter leaning forward, eyes wide with wonder, the candlelight dancing across her face, and Mara, sitting across from her, looked almost exactly the way Ilara had looked in the evenings, long ago, calm, grounded, and full of love that didn't need to be spoken aloud. Orion didn't interrupt. He stood there longer than he intended, listening to the end of the story. For the first time in years, he felt something warm and unfamiliar in his chest. It wasn't the feeling of a successful deal or a political win. It was home. When the power returned hours later, the guests immediately resumed their conversations, relieved to be back in the bright, polished world they understood. But for Lyra, something had changed. That night had shown her the difference between someone who could impress a crowd and someone who could steady a heart. She went to bed knowing one thing for certain: her choice was becoming clearer, and it had nothing to do with the 5 women who had come to win her over. The day of the announcement arrived, like the opening scene of a play the whole galaxy had been waiting for. From the moment the sun rose above the floating city, the mansion was alive with movement. Reporters hovered outside the gates in their pods, broadcasting updates every minute. Guards lined the entryway in polished silver armor. Inside, the great hall had been transformed into a stage, rows of seats for diplomats, leaders, and wealthy guests, with bright lights ready to capture every second. Lyra stood in her room, staring at the simple white dress Mara had laid out. For her it wasn't covered in jewels or gold, but it felt right. Mara's hands moved gently as she brushed Lyra's hair. "Are you ready?" Mara asked softly. Lyra took a deep breath. "I think I've been ready for longer than I realized." Down in the great hall, Orion stood at the front, wearing his formal black suit. The 5 candidates sat in the first row, each looking confident in their own way. Solara of Mars had her chin lifted high. The Venusian mogul gave a calm, polished smile. The lunar heiress glanced around with quiet pride. The Jovian diplomat's posture was flawless, and the Terran media star waved at the cameras. When Lyra entered, a ripple went through the room. Cameras turned, flashes lit up, and the whispers began. She walked to the center of the stage, her small hands clasped in front of her. Orion's voice carried over the crowd. "Today," he said, "my daughter will announce the woman she believes should become part of our family. This is her choice alone." The hall grew silent. Lyra turned to face the audience. She looked at each of the 5 women. They were beautiful, powerful, and all watching her with eager eyes. "I've met each of you," Lyra began, her voice steady but gentle. "You've shown me your worlds, your gifts, and your promises. You are all remarkable. But when I thought about what a mother should be, I realized it's not just about what she can give. It's about how she makes you feel." She paused, and the silence grew heavier. "A mother," she continued, "is someone who makes you feel safe. Someone who listens when no one else does. Someone who sees you, not just what you can become. And the person who's been that for me isn't one of you." Gasps echoed through the hall. The media drones zoomed in. Lyra turned toward the back of the room, where Mara stood in her plain uniform, almost hidden in the shadows. "I choose Mara." For a moment, time seemed to stop. Mara's eyes widened in shock, and she shook her head slightly, as if to say, "No, you can't mean that." The 5 candidates froze, their smiles gone. The audience whispered, voices rising in disbelief. Orion's gaze went to Mara, and then back to Lyra. There was surprise in his eyes, and something else. Slowly, he stepped forward. "If that is your choice," he said at last, his voice low, but certain, "then Mara, it is." The hall erupted, some clapping, some protesting, some simply stunned. The cameras captured Mara walking forward, her steps hesitant, her expression caught between disbelief and emotion. When she reached Lyra, the girl threw her arms around her, holding her tight. The warmth in that embrace was unlike anything the audience had seen that day. It was real. It was unshakable. And for the first time, the galaxy's most watched event wasn't about power, wealth, or politics. It was about love. The galaxy did not take the news quietly. Within hours of Lyra's announcement, every media channel was ablaze. Some headlines were shocked. Earth heiress rejects power marriage for housekeeper. Others were curious. Who is Mara, the woman who stole the galaxy's heart? And a few were openly critical. Orion Vale risks Earth's future over child's choice in the days that followed. Political advisors flooded Orion with messages. Some begged him to reverse the decision, warning of irreparable diplomatic consequences. Trade partners from Mars and Venus hinted at withdrawing deals. The lunar heiress's family issued a public statement of disappointment. The Jovian diplomat's government expressed concern over Earth's judgment, but Orion didn't flinch. For the first time in years, he ignored the political noise and focused on his home. He thought about what he had seen during the storm. The way Mara had calmed Lyra with nothing more than a candle and a story. No treaty, no alliance, no wealth could match the peace he'd witnessed in that moment. Mara herself was overwhelmed. She had never imagined being in the center of the galaxy's attention. "I'm not a politician," she told Orion quietly one evening. "I don't know the first thing about being whatever they expect me to be." Orion looked at her for a long time before answering. "They don't need you to be a politician, Mara. They need you to be who you've always been for Lyra, for me, for this family." Lyra, for her part, was happier than she had been in years. She no longer felt like she was pretending for the cameras. Her choice had been real, and every time she saw Mara's warm smile in the morning, she knew she had done the right thing. Weeks passed, and something unexpected began to happen. At first, people had mocked the decision as foolish. But slowly, voices began to change. A clip of Mara telling Lyra's bedtime story during the storm went viral. Millions watched it, not for politics, but for the comfort in her voice. Parents wrote to Orion, saying they admired the choice to value love over power. Even a few alien diplomats admitted they respected the courage it took to stand against tradition. The media started calling it the real alliance, not between planets, but between hearts. One quiet evening, the three of them sat together on the balcony. The city below shimmered under the stars. Orion leaned back in his chair, watching Lyra laugh as Mara braided her hair. For the first time since Ilra's passing, his home felt alive again. "You know," Orion said, "the council will never understand why we did this." Mara smiled softly, without looking up. "That's because they think alliances are built on contracts, but the strongest ones are built on trust." Lyra tilted her head back to look at the stars. "Do you think Mama would be happy?" she asked. Orion's eyes softened. "I think she'd be proud of you. You reminded me of something I forgot a long time ago, that family isn't about status. It's about who's there for you, no matter what." The wind was gentle that night, carrying the faint hum of airships in the distance. For once, there were no reporters at the gates, no political advisors knocking at the door. Just the three of them, sitting together, feeling more like a family than they ever had before. And somewhere deep in her heart, Lyra knew that her choice had done something even greater than securing an alliance for Earth. It had secured an alliance for her own life. One built not on wealth, but on love.